Up to verse 6. God has told Abraham that he wants him to sacrifice his son. And he set out on the journey, and he arrived at the location, at a particular mountain that he's going to climb, and that's where the sacrifice is going to take place. So he's about to go up the mountain. Verse 6. Now I'm going to read 6 through 8, and then we're going to analyze them piece by piece. Abraham took the wood for the offering and placed it on Isaac his son. He took in his hand the fire and the knife. The way they carried fire in those days was all night long you had a fire burning for protection. In the morning you took a large portion of coals, you put them in a jar, vessel, and you carried them with you so that you could start a fire, and it lasted throughout the day. So he took the wood, put it on Isaac, took in his hand the fire and the knife, and the two of them went together. And Isaac spoke to Abraham's father and said, "Father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." And he said, "Here, the fire and the wood. Where is the lamb for the offering?" That's what I told you yesterday, that this was a regular procedure. And usually, if the point of the sacrifice was distant, you didn't walk a lamb for 3 days. It's a pain in the neck. You went to the area where the sacrifice was going to take place, and you bought a lamb at a local market, and then you used that for the sacrifice. But now, it arrived at the side of the mountain, and there aren't any markets on the mountain, so Isaac says to his father, "We're missing one of the ingredients." And Abraham said, "God will seek out for himself the lamb for the offering, my son." And the two of them went together. Now, let's work on this a little bit. The end of verse 6 says the two of them went together. The end of verse 8 says the two of them went together. I suggest to you that both of them are questionable. What did you expect? They were going to go up separately? You take the high road and I'll take the low road. Right? They're going up the mountain, the last approach to the place of sacrifice. Furthermore, when the four of them set out on the journey 3 days ago, it doesn't say they went together. Now, when it's the two of them going up the mountain, it has to say they went together. Very peculiar. And at the end of the story, we'll see that they returned to Beersheba, and there again it says they went together. So the double usage here is very peculiar. Now, at the very least, if you take a text seriously, any text, Shakespeare, if you use words, you have to imagine that if the words weren't there, I would have lost something. The words have to contribute some important content. So what we have to ask is, suppose these words weren't here, what would we have lost? What do these words contribute? Especially saying it twice. Put that on the table for a moment. Now let's see what's going on. Isaac says to Abraham, "My father," and he says, "Here I am, my son." And he says, "Here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb, animal?" The word in Hebrew is a little broader than lamb. Young animal for the offering. Now, Abraham answers in verse 8, God will seek out for himself the lamb for the offering, my son. Is he getting an answer here? Yeah.
He says he'll seek out a lamb, like he says like an animal.
In Hebrew it's seh. Seh can mean a young sheep or a young goat.
Right, but he knows that doesn't Avraham know it's not going to be a sheep or a goat?
Well, yes, he answers Isaac in the term that Isaac used. But more than that, I'm asking a different question now. Is Isaac getting an answer here? Why would it say a second time that they went together? To say a second time they went together means something in the conversation should have driven them apart, but the text testifies, no, they went together. Now, what in this conversation could have possibly led them apart? If he's communicating to Isaac gently and with a hint, he'll choose for himself the animal, my son. The animal, my son. Get it? The animal, my son. Huh? On the page? The animal, my son. Right? And he gets it. So then we might expect some resistance, some complaint, some discussion. How old is Isaac? 37. You have the picture of a wee lad of 6 being led unknowingly to the slaughter. Cancel it. Yeah.
Is it here that the second time they say and the two of them went together, this time they're going with the same intention as opposed to going with the same understanding as opposed to the time?
Okay, so now we have to explain that as well. Okay, but I'm just saying, if you take the second time went together, that definitely is indication that when Abraham responds to Isaac, he's telling him, you're it. He's telling it to him in a very gentle way. He's telling him, you're it. Now, one explanation here is this. We're not talking about how many feet they were apart if they walked up. They went together, they weren't a mile apart. That's ridiculous. That's not what the text is trying to tell us. So let's look at their mental set. Let's look at what's going on inside. In verse 6, Abraham's going up knowing that the sacrifice is going to be his son. Isaac's going up thinking it's going to be an animal. That's why he asks, Dad, where's the animal? Abraham's going up with a double state of mind. On the one hand, this is something that God has commanded him to do. We saw that he did all the preparations himself, that he got up early in the morning to do the preparations because the mitzvah is precious to him. But there is a dread. There's a dread of the idea of having to kill his own son. He goes up with a double state of mind. Just as an aside, which is interesting to note, if you have contradictory ideas, you're in trouble because something you believe isn't true. If you have contradictory emotions, you might not be in trouble. There are experiences in life or circumstances in life which deserve contradictory emotions, like a love-hate relationship, where the love and the hate might both be justified. So if you have contradictory emotions, there's nothing wrong with that. Here, Abraham, at least on the surface, is living with two conflicting emotions side by side: the glory, the exaltation of being able to serve God, and the fact that he's got to kill his son. Isaac is going to serve God. That's all. So the text says they're together in that they share one half. One half of Abraham is shared by Isaac. The second time it says they went together, Isaac now knows the truth. What's his state of mind? His state of mind now becomes double, just like his father's state of mind. And now they go up more together than they were before. They both have the same double state of mind. The commitment, the exaltation of being able to serve God, and the test of being able to stand what is going to be for them a very difficult test, each one in his own way. As we'll see, the test is different for the two of them. We'll do that a little bit later. Are you together so far with it together? Yeah.
Are you implying that when Abraham says that they're seeking out a lamb for the offering my son, that Isaac from that sentence knows that he's the one who's going to be the...
That's right. That's why it has to say they went up together. Again, otherwise, having said they were going up together and they exchanged a few words, there's no reason to say again that they went up together. To say they went together means there's something that you might have thought would have separated them. And that's at least one way to explain it. And all of the commentary agrees. There's no one who thinks that Isaac didn't get it here. Now, let's look again. In 6 it says, he, Abraham, took in his hand the fire and the knife, and the two of them went together. He put the wood on Isaac, and he took the fire and the knife. Now, Isaac says, here are the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for the offering? Something strike you here?
Contradicts what we just said. He doesn't have the fire, he only has the wood.
Here are doesn't mean he's holding his hand. It means it's visible. It's present. How many items are mentioned in 6 and how many items are mentioned in 7?
Oh, yeah, the knife is missing.
What happened to the knife, boys and girls? 6 says he put the wood on Isaac, his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. Isaac says, here are the wood and the fire and the wood. What happened to the knife?
You wouldn't, I don't know if there's something around the rules of kashrut, you don't flaunt the knife in front of
Good for you.
in front of the animal.
Good for you. When you're going to sacrifice an animal, to slaughter an animal, you don't show it the knife. So there's a little more than just where's the animal? Isaac specifies, here are the wood and the fire and the wood. What does he say that for? Why does he just say, Dad, where's the animal? No. The fire and the wood are visible. The knife has suddenly disappeared, and we don't have the animal. What's going on?
Perhaps it's knew beforehand.
Sorry?
Perhaps the Yitzhak already knew.
I don't think so. Otherwise, why would he ask? If he knew, then he'd just go silently and accept it. So when he asks and he points out that these two are present and he leaves out the knife, he is indicating that the knife has disappeared.
I actually just have an idea based on what, if Yitzhak knew, perhaps he was trying to calm his father down, because his father didn't want to tell him.
Okay, but that's, I mean, we'll talk someday about how one goes about interpreting a text. You need direct evidence in the text. The fact that an idea is consistent with the text isn't good enough. It's a very important point. It's an important point in law, in contracts, in literature, in reading and understanding correspondence with somebody. The fact that an interpretation is consistent with the text is not good enough. There has to be direct, positive evidence in the text that that's what the text means. Okay, so they go together. They arrived at the place which God had spoken to him. Abraham built the altar there, arranged the wood. He bound Isaac, his son, placed him on top of the altar, on top of the wood. Why does he tie him up? Don't forget, Isaac is 37. Abraham's 137. Okay, Abraham was a very vigorous 137. He lived 175. Still, Isaac's 37. He can't do this against his will. Isaac has to be willing to do this. So why is it done? The standard explanation is this. Isaac said to him, please tie me up, because when I see the knife coming at me to kill me, I might flinch. I might shake. I might not be able to control my reaction. And I don't want to spoil it. I want it to be perfect. I can tell you, I once had a sty inside of my eyelid. And I went to an ophthalmologist, and they take it out, okay? He flips your eyelid back so you can't close your eye, and then he comes at you with a knife to cut out the sty. And my thought was, I'm getting out of here. He's going to, okay, I'm paying him to do this, I know. But seeing a knife approach, and he was only coming to cut out a sty. He wasn't coming to kill me. So Isaac said, tie me up so there'll be no blemish, no fault in the sacrifice. If you don't say something like that, it's very difficult to understand why a 37-year-old man has to put up with something that he doesn't want to participate in.
So we said that they go up together and they use that same width as though, like we said.
No,
yesterday.
it isn't the word with. It isn't the word with. Here's yachtav. Yachtav is a different word altogether. Good try, but that's good thinking. You're putting together what we said last time about with. Yachtav is a different word, and that's the word that's used at the end of the context also.
So what does that yachtav come to mean?
It's strong. It's very much like im, with sharing.
I understand when he says the animal, my son.
Yes, and then still go up yachtav. Yachtav is related to echad. It means like being one. Yeah.
I think you said yesterday that Avraham, the whole point of the trip was for Avraham to process and become ready for this. What about Yitzchak?
Ooh, wonderful question. In all the times that I have taught this, no one has asked that question. If the 3 days were for Abraham to reconcile himself to it and to say that he was not going to be in shock when he did it, but he thought about it clearly, what about Isaac? Why didn't he need time also to process it, so we won't say that what he did in shock? That's a wonderful question, and it fits perfectly into the analysis that I'm going to give you. So just keep it on record, and I'll come back and I'll explain it. But that's really very nice. It's obvious once you say it, but nobody has asked it, and I've never heard anybody ask it. It's terrific, very good. Okay. Now, Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. There's a lot of literature about this story and lots of fanciful remarks. And there are those who say he didn't really think he was going to have to do it, and he knew it would be countermanded at the end. This verse contradicts them. It says he took his hand to slaughter his son. So he is acting to carry it out. And an angel of Hashem called out from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, here I am. And he said, Do not stretch out your hand against the lad, nor do anything to him. For now I know that you are a God-fearing man, since you have not withheld your son, your only one, for me. Now it's time for a commercial. I grew up Reformed, and this story was taught, for all I know, it's still taught this way. What's the point of this story? When this is taking place, human sacrifice is very widespread. This story is taking its claim against a worldwide human cultural form, human sacrifice. So, the story takes Abraham, a hero of the book, and puts him through all the paces up to the last moment of human sacrifice, and then says, no, don't do that. God doesn't want that. That's barbarian. It's savage. The human sacrifice is not something that the creator of the universe wants. And that's why the story is so revolutionary, and it contributes to the development of more civilized human culture, where it simply puts a stop to the idea of human sacrifice. That's the way a story is sold. Now let's read the words again, and you tell me whether that fits the words that are written on the page. 12. He said, this is the angel speaking to Abraham, do not stretch out your hand against the lad, nor do anything to him. For now I know that you are a God-fearing man, since you have not withheld your son, your only one, from me. You passed the test, Abraham. You've already passed the test. Why? Because you didn't withhold him. What does it mean you didn't withhold? It means you were ready to go. You didn't hold him back. You didn't say no. You didn't refuse. No, you were ready to go. That's how you passed the test. If I read the text here, the text tells me when God tells you to sacrifice your son, you have to sacrifice your son. This one is countermandated for some reason that God knows, and maybe we'll be able to say something about it. But there is no indication here whatsoever that God is against human sacrifice across the board. There's no criticism of Abraham here. There's no indication he should elevate himself to a different cultural level, a different ideological level, different moral level. No indication whatsoever. And on the next page, it said again, look at verse 15. The angel of Hashem called to Abraham a second time from heaven, and he said, by myself I swear the word of Hashem, that because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only one, you didn't hold him back, you were ready to go through with the sacrifice, that I shall surely bless you and greatly increase your offspring like the stars of the heavens, like the sand of the seashore. Your offspring shall inherit the gate of its enemy. All the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring, because you have listened to my voice. So the question that we mentioned yesterday, we're going to get to Amir Hashem. How can God command human sacrifice? We can't avoid that question by simply saying that he called it off at the last minute, and calling it off means that the text's message is that the text is against it. On the contrary, the text gives no indication whatsoever that there's a rejection of the idea of human sacrifice. In this case, it was called off for some reason that we will be able to discuss. Yeah.
This might confuse things slightly, but I heard this idea that in order to hear an angel, you need to be in a state of joy, a state of happiness.
Prophecy.
Prophecy.
Yeah, but prophecy is not an angel. Oh, well, okay. There are different ways to interact with angels. Sometimes angels are the intermediaries of prophecy, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's a lower intermediary. And by the way, how do they translate this here? Yeah. If you look, I'll just show you something which we're going to have to explain. If you look carefully, at the very beginning, it says, God said to Abraham, and here it says an angel. So it's not the same level of interaction. And that may indicate part of what you're talking about. In other words, this is a much lower level of interaction, and it may be because at this point the joy isn't there, or not the same level of joy.
I guess what I was trying to get at, and this may not follow then, is the idea that Abraham heard the voice of the angel of Hashem calling out to him at the point he was about to strike the dagger.
Right.
It says, presumably if he hadn't been in that level of joy to serve Hashem, he wouldn't have heard the angel.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair. I skirted something. The Gemara talks about this. I skirted something before. Let's leave it for the time being. It'll just confuse things. Let's leave it for the time being. Maybe when we get there, I'll come back and I'll talk about it again. Okay, so he doesn't sacrifice. Now, 13. Abraham raised his eyes and saw, behold, a ram afterwards caught in the thicket by its horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as an offering instead of his son. Now, I want to share with you something that Rashi says at the beginning. If you talk about this with people who have black hats, they may bring this up. This Rashi is very widely misunderstood, and this last verse that I read to you is the key to understanding it correctly. Back at the beginning, this bears what I said about Abraham's intentions to carry it out. On page 101, the English here is not bad. Verse 2, God said to Abraham, please take your son, your only one whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Bring him up there as an offering. Ha'alehu sham la'ola. Ha'alehu means bring him up. That could be, walk him to the top of the hill, or drive him up to the top of the hill in your car, or take him in a helicopter. That just make him go higher as an offering. Rashi quotes a statement in Chazal. God says, I told you to bring him up. Bring him up. You brought him up. You built an altar. You put him on top of the altar. You brought him up. Good. Now take him down. I told you to bring him up. You brought him up. Now take him down. The incorrect reading of the Rashi is, God is telling him, I never told you to slaughter him. I didn't say kill him. I didn't say slaughter him. I just said bring him up. Now if you brought him up, bring him down, take him down. The idea would be to save God's consistency. God says to do it, and God says not to do it. God's saying, no, it's perfectly consistent. All I told you to do was bring him up, and you did bring him up. That's totally incorrect. It's totally incorrect. First of all, you have to ask, does Abraham speak the language? Does he understand the language? Is Abraham interested in saving his son? If all God said was to bring him up, is Abraham volunteering beyond what God told him to kill his son? Now, get good novelists, and get out some hidden motivation and do the kind of nonsense that the novelists do. It's ridiculous. More than that, the Hebrew bring him up as an offering means slaughter, pour out the blood, and burn up the body on the altar. That's what it means. It's an idiom. Yes, the literal word to slaughter isn't used there, but it's an idiom, like so many idioms in so many languages. Proof is that when Abraham sacrifices the ram, that's the word that's used. Ayat lehu sham la'ola, the very same idiom. You don't think that Abraham took the ram, tied it up, put it on top of the altar, and then took it down and untied it and let it run off into the forest. Lahalos la'ola means to sacrifice, to slaughter, to pour out the blood and burn out the body. That's what the phrase means as an idiom. Any speaker in Hebrew knows that. If Abraham had voluntarily put Isaac on top of the altar and then untied him and took him down, he would have violated God's command. He understood it correctly, and that's why it says he stretched out his hand to take the knife to slaughter his son. So what is Rashi doing? So some of you were here last week, and we talked about the two concerns of truth. That the Jewish culture has two values of truth. One value is that when you speak to someone, you should not mislead him. Your words should create in him true ideas, not false ideas. And the other is the words you use should be true words. Both are Jewish values, and they're not the same. And you could have circumstances in which they come apart. For example, if someone believes that I exaggerate, and I want to communicate some information to him, if I tell him true words, he's going to reduce it by half because he thinks I exaggerate, and he'll end up with a false idea. I can only communicate to him a true idea by doubling the description where my words aren't true. So, true words is one thing, and a true communication is another thing. Now, God wants to test Abraham. He wants to test him to show that he's prepared to sacrifice his son. God, in the end, doesn't want Isaac to die. But hey, he can't let Abraham know that, so he's misleading Abraham. That he is doing. But the words he's using can be read in a true way. That's what Rashi is saying. Those who remember this with Avimelech, we spoke about this. That's what Rashi is saying. The words have a true reading, not the idiomatic reading that any Hebrew speaker would understand, but they have a true reading, and that's all that's being said. And nothing in the Rashi or in the Chazal to indicate that Abraham didn't think he was really going to sacrifice his son. He definitely did think he was going to sacrifice his son. And that's why the moral question is still strictly on the table. Are we together so far?
Yeah, so the point being that Hashem could mislead you deliberately.
Sorry, say again?
Hashem could choose to mislead you deliberately.
Yes, of course, of course. In fact, in certain cases where God did that, we learn circumstances under which we're allowed to mislead also. We're allowed to do that for the sake of marital harmony, for example. There's a case where God himself did it, and the Talmud says if God did it, we can do it also. There was a great philosopher named Immanuel Kant who said, truth is absolutely inviolable. You're never allowed to tell a lie. Well, between you and me, that was colossally dumb. Peter's trying to kill Paul. Paul knocks on your door frantically. You open it up, and he says, Peter's trying to kill me. And he hides in your coat closet. 30 seconds later, Peter comes to the door, and he comes with a gun. He says, where's Paul? I say, oh, I remember Immanuel Kant. I cannot tell a lie. Where's Paul? He's in the closet. Thanks a lot. Bang! And he's dead. I don't think that's the right move. The right move is to say, he made it around the corner, chase him quickly, and he'll catch him. You don't always have to tell the truth. Truth is a value, but it's not the supreme value. There are times when other values take precedence over that value. You have to know in each case, what you're able to do. Yeah.
Was there a time in these stories, like the Chumash, that one of the patriarchs or matriarchs misinterpreted God's message, and they did something that they just thought God wanted, but in the end, He didn't really want it that way?
Sarah.
If you're talking about God's message, directly to the person, our understanding of prophecy is such that can't happen. In real prophecy, the prophet receives a communication, and the communication is a true communication. You can't understand. In other words, God. Let's be careful with the words now. Maybe I'm not getting it quite right. When someone speaks words, the words have a meaning, and the speaker intends to convey a certain meaning, and he conveys a meaning. What the speaker knows, what the speaker's own intentions are, is hidden. He didn't talk about that. God communicated to Abraham a speech. The speech says, sacrifice your son. Abraham understood that correctly. That is the communication that God wanted Abraham to receive, and he received it correctly. God privately didn't want Isaac to die. Okay, very good. But that he wasn't communicating. So it isn't as if the communication to Abraham failed. On the contrary, Abraham got exactly the message that God wanted to convey.
Why is it impossible that he didn't misinterpret the message?
That he did misinterpret the message?
Did not. Why is it impossible that he did not misinterpret the message? You're saying it's not possible.
I don't think you're saying what you mean. You want to. I'm saying it's impossible that he should misinterpret.
Yeah, that's what
you mean. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because that's the way God communicates with people in prophecy and also in lower. When God is communicating, He does it in such a way that the person can't misinterpret. God's not limited, and he doesn't do that. Okay, so now. Sorry.
There was a part earlier when Yaakov was born. God told Sarah that she was going to have a son. Sarah laughed about it, and then God went back to Avraham, and God lied to Avraham and said, "Oh, Sarah said she laughed about it because you're not fit, because you're too old." With Sarah's, I think
you have it backwards, but that's exactly what I was referring to. What she said was, "We're not going to have a child because we're both too old." God reported her as saying, "We're not going to have a child because I'm too old," and leaving out her reference to Abraham being too old. And the Maharal points out that that's not just an omission, but it's a distortion. Because what she really said was, we're not going to have a child because we're both too old, meaning he's 50% of the problem and I'm 50% of the problem. God reports her as saying, we're not going to have a child because I'm too old, full stop, meaning I'm the whole of the problem. She didn't say that. She didn't say that, and she didn't imply that. But God omitted her reference to Abraham and falsely portrays her as taking full responsibility for the problem so as to save the relationship between husband and wife. He should not report to Abraham that in Sarah's eyes he's too old. And that's one of the places where we learn that you can lie for the sake of marital harmony. Right there is where we learn it from. Yes?
On the second half of the story, when the angel comes down and tells him, don't slaughter your son.
Yeah.
First time, God decrees it. I've wondered this for a long time. Why does it happen like that? It makes it seem like the second half of the story is like of lesser importance. First time, God decrees it. Seems pretty important. The second time, the prophet decrees it. It's a little less important. It's not that it's not.
Good. So let me give you just one more piece of data to think about. The names of God are not the same. The names of God are not the same. Beginning of the story, the word, and this is, the English is consistent here. G-O-D is Elohim.
The din.
Right. And here it's Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Hashem, which is Rachamim, which is mercy. And of the two, the latter is the higher name. And that may compensate for the fact that in the second case you have an angel, because it's an angel representing a higher level. Whereas in the first case, it's God himself, but God himself on a lower level. So there may be a compensation there. Right, we'll have to talk about this. But hey, in addition...
How do we understand the whole picture, though?
The whole picture of what, sorry?
The prophet being on the latter half.
The prophet?
The angel, I'm sorry, the angel.
How do we understand the angel? I'm not quite sure I understand your question. Well, let me add in something. Maybe this will help. Take a look, again, on page 105. This is very important to know about angels, what angels are, what they do. Look at verse 15. Let's read it slowly and pay careful attention to the vocabulary. The angel of Hashem called to Abraham a second time from heaven. And he said, now this is the angel speaking. The translator gives it away by his punctuation, but don't be overwhelmed by that. Just let's think about it. Here are the words. By myself, I swear the word of Hashem, that because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only one, I shall bless you, etc., etc. Whose words are those?
Hashem's words.
It's the angel speaking Hashem's words. The angel is speaking them, but they're Hashem's words. I'll give you an analogy. The royal messenger comes to the town square, they blow the trumpets, all the people gather, and the messenger says, I have a scroll from the king. Opens up. Thus says the king, new taxes, new holidays, so forth and so on. Whose words are new taxes and new holidays? They're the king's words. Just happens that the messenger's reading them, but they're the king's words. When angels speak, they're speaking God's words. They're not speaking on their own. Usually, almost always. They're speaking God's words. It's just that it's being communicated to an angel, which is a lower level of communication. But they're not the angel's words. An angel can't promise blessings. An angel can't promise victory in war in the future. Right? That's God who's promising it. It's an angel speaking on behalf of God. And the same is true on 103. When the angel tells him to stop, it's not as if an angel says, "Come and stop." Abraham should say, who are you? God himself told me to do it. Who are you? No, but of course, if the angel's speaking God's words. And it's coming from a level of God that's a higher level. Yeah.
If he's saying, who are you? And he's saying, why does he say by myself, I swear?
It means God speaks in human vocabulary. That's why he's talking to us. And when a person swears, he often swears by some item that's of a supreme value that gives his oath more credibility, more substance. In America, if you're a witness, you have to right? You do it on a Bible, right? And unless you're an Orthodox Jew, and there are ways around it. You do it on a Bible, because the idea is this is the Bible, it represents your religion, and that's what you swear by. Okay, now what would you have God swear by? A galaxy? Any other thing is just a creature, right? So God says, I swear by myself. In other words, I'm taking this oath as authoritative as possible by swearing by the most authoritative thing in the world, which is myself. That's the meaning of the expression. Yeah.
Is this a prophecy?
Sorry?
Is this a prophecy?
Which?
that I shall and greatly increase your offering,
Sure.
the stars of the heavens, and like the sands of the seashore.
Sure.
Okay, so then, and all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your offspring.
Yes.
When's that going to happen?
It already happened many times. There were times when people saw the success of the Jewish people, they said to their children, I hope you'll grow up like that. I hope you'll be like that. Times of David, times of Solomon. Times of David and Solomon, there was a rule not to accept converts because we had a kingdom, we had an economy, our wisdom was famous. Foreign kings and queens came to learn wisdom from Solomon. People said the Jews are special, and we hope that you'll grow up to be something like that. They blessed themselves by your offspring.
What happened?
What happened? Okay, it's a long story. Now, let me point out one more thing and explain it to you. On page 105, after it's all over, he gets his promise in 15, 16, 17, 18. 19, Abraham returned to his young men, and they stood up and went together to Beersheba. Abraham stayed at Beersheba. What strikes you about this verse?
Where's Isaac?
Where's Isaac? My goodness gracious. Abraham returned to his young men. What happened to Isaac? Okay. Take a look at page 717. Very top of the page. This is God speaking. I'll remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham. I'll remember the land. Okay, it's reverse chronological order. True. Good. What else?
Why couldn't it say I will remember my covenant with Avraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, Yaakov?
Sorry, I'm not getting you.
Why doesn't he say my covenant with Yaakov?
I mean, why repeat it at all?
Good.
Good. Okay, good. What else? You're on to something, but what else? Something very peculiar here. How many items are being remembered? 4. The 3 patriarchs and the land. How many times does it say I'll remember? 3. Boys and girls, that doesn't compute. If you want to be economical, as he suggests, right, I'll remember A, B, C, and D. If you want to specify, I'll remember A, I'll remember B, I'll remember C, I'll remember D. To say, I'll remember A, I'll remember B and C, and I'll remember D, that's very peculiar. That means the one that's left out is left out. It's left out. Which one is left out? Isaac is left out. On this, there's a midrash. Epharo shel Yitzchak munach lefonai tamid. The ashes of Isaac are placed before me continuously. Something happened to Isaac up there. Something happened to him. He didn't come down the same. One indication of it is that he never left the land of Israel. Abraham came to Israel, there was a famine, and he left. Jacob was born in Israel, there was a famine. He left twice, actually. He left to get married, and there was a famine, and he left. There was a famine in Isaac's time also. He started on the way down to Egypt, and God said, no, not you. Not you. You can't go out. Isaac got married because Abraham sent an emissary outside the land of Israel to his extended family to find him a wife. Isaac didn't go. He can't leave the land of Israel. The words in the Midrash is the old Tamima. He's a pure sacrifice. That means he's limited in a certain way. He needs a certain context in a certain way. He was really different. He was blind at the end of his life. Something happened to him, and that's what's reflected in the verse that Abraham came down. It doesn't say that Isaac came down. Of course, he walked down, but he didn't come down whole. Now, last thing, which traumatized or whatever. We need a deeper understanding of what his motivation was. Now, it says yachtav. The third time it says together. They went together. I thought of something here, and then I was very happy to find that one of the great scholars of the previous generation thought of it. Abraham has now participated in one of the greatest spiritual experiences in the history of mankind. He comes down, and his 2 servants are waiting for him. Can he be together with them? Or has he been spiritualized out of the capability of being together with people who aren't at his spiritual level? The text says yachtav. He was able to be yachtav with those 2. And this is a key to Judaism altogether. The spiritual development of an individual is an investment in what he can do for other people. It's not a recognition of his own position. I will tell you, I've been told by people who studied Buddhism, that once Buddha achieved enlightenment, it's a serious theological problem for them why he stepped out of it to talk to other people. Why? You're now in nirvana. You're in the highest possible state a human being can be. What do you gain by coming down and talking to other people? It's a problem for them. The problem for us doesn't arise. The very fact that a person achieves a great spiritual level, which he achieves by God's gift, all achievements are by God's gift. All we do is make an effort. Means that God's making an investment in him for other people. When Moses is on the mountain and the people create the golden calf, God says to Moses, go down. Because they've done destructively, Talmud says, go down from your greatness. Why did I invest greatness in you? So you could do something for them. They can't receive from your greatness, you lose it. It's not for you, not just a recognition of your efforts. It's an investment in you for them. That's what's being said over here. The one who said it in the previous generation was Rabbi Kohen Cook. I saw it in his siddur, in a commentary on this passage. So that's a very important message that the text is giving us here. Okay, we've done the surrounding, the environment, the periphery. Tomorrow we'll talk about the deeper philosophical issues.